too late last night watching the Gators lose. Yeah, it was fun, right? Anyways, my name's Kevin. I am so glad that you've chosen to join us today. It's really great to see you. I know it's a rainy, gloomy day, and I wanted to stay in bed all morning when that alarm went off. I'm telling you, it's like perfect sleeping weather, right? But you chose to be here, and so Gold Star, yes, awesome. Thank you so much for being here. At this time, before I get into any announcements, if you are an elementary school child and you would like to join our Meizon Kids program in the back with Miss Kylan, she's back there waving. And so if you want to go and be part of the kids program, you can do that at this time. If you look at the screen, there is a QR code. It is a digital Connect card. It is going to take you directly to not the dark web, but to our little form where you can fill it out and you can give us any prayer requests you have. If you have any questions about who we are or what we're doing, or if you want to get involved, you can also just send a little note in there and say, hey, we're thinking about you, because we really like getting nice notes from you guys. It's really nice to hear from you guys. So definitely fill out the Connect card. Want to let you know that we are going to be doing our big annual Serve GNV on Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve is on a Sunday this year, and so that makes things a little tricky, but it also makes things a little more awesome. And the reason why is because it means that everybody can participate and serve GNV this year. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be having church that morning, like normal time, 10:30. We're going to get here, we're going to have some worship, we're going to have like a very, very short, like kind of devotional word, and then we're going to get together in the commons, and what we're going to do is we're going to construct gift bags. We're going to put little gift bags together with a little granola bar and some mints and a little note that says, hey, we appreciate you. And what we're going to do is later in the day, we're going to go around town and we're going to drop those off to people who have to work on Christmas Eve. Because who wants to work on Christmas Eve? Nobody wants to work on Christmas Eve, right? And so we get to go out and we get to go into our community and tell these people who are working, so that we don't have to, that we appreciate them and that we love them and that they're seen and known and recognized for doing the work that they're doing. And so we're going to go around to different like urgent care places and some convenience stores, and we're going to be delivering those bags later in the day. But in the morning, we're going to be making those, 10:30 in the morning. We'll get together for church. We'll make some gift bags. And then that evening on Christmas Eve at 5 p.m., we're going to have a traditional candlelight service here. We're going to sing Silent Night. We're going to light the candles. It's going to be like old school. It's going to be awesome. And then after that, we're going to send people out in teams or as families to go deliver the bags. Sound good? You guys in on this? It's going to be awesome. I'm super excited about it. I love doing this. The other thing I want to let you know is that there are going to be some serving opportunities in the new year. We're going to be trying to do some live streaming. I know that sounds, that just stresses me out to say. We're going to live stream this service. Woo! Okay, so we're going to live stream this service in the new year, and we're going to need some extra volunteers to help with cameras and live stream and pushing buttons and stuff like that. So if you're technically inclined and you would like to help with our online ministry, I'd love to talk to you. There's other opportunities to get involved. You can service host, which means you can do what I'm doing right now, because gosh, I know you guys don't want to listen to me do this when you could do it. You could be up here and doing this. So if you want to be a service host or help with communion, we would love to talk to you. Also, there's opportunities in kids ministry and small groups, and you could lead a group and all that stuff. So if you want to get involved and get plugged in here at Meizon, we would love to talk to you. So talk to me or Miranda or Drake, and we'll get you plugged in. How many of you guys were at Thanksgiving together on Thursday? A lot of you, right? Thanksgiving together was awesome. It was so great. We were able to really love our community well, and the food was fantastic. The entertainment was awesome. We probably had about 150 to 200 people come through over the course of 4 hours, which is amazing. That's so good. And so the only way that we can do the things that we do, these opportunities, Serve GNV, Thanksgiving together, these services, creating these spaces where people feel welcomed and loved right where they are, the only way that can happen is through the generosity of people just like you and me. And so we want to let you know that if you would like to be generous, you can give on our website. It's on the screen, meizonchurch.com. You can also text to give. Fancy, right? Text to give. What you do is you text the amount to 84321. You follow the prompts and select Meizon Church as your church, and you can give that way. The other thing is we can be old school and give physical checks and physical offerings through the boxes that are hanging on the wall right by the back door. And so if you want to give, you can give that way. If you need help with online giving, I know that technology can be intimidating for some people. Just talk to us, talk to me or Miranda or Drake. We can get you connected to online giving, and we'd love to help you with that. So We have been doing, for the entire month of November, we have been doing Compassion Month, where we talk about different partners that we do ministry with. So we don't do ministry in a vacuum at Meizon. What we do is we partner with different groups that are already doing great work in our country, in around the world, and in our own backyard. And so we find these partners, and we work with them, and we support them in what they're doing. And so each week we've been talking about a different partner, and it's been really awesome. This week, Pastor Drake is going to come, and he's going to talk to us about what we just did, which was Thanksgiving together, and some other ways that we as a community can just continue to love people right where they are. So Pastor Drake's going to come up, and he's going to conclude our series.
Jesus spent his time with people for whom life was not easy. And there, amid those who were suffering, he was the embodiment of perfect love.
Good morning and welcome to Meizon. My name is Drake. I'm one of the pastors here. Kevin repeatedly did say Pastor Drake, so if you're not clear on being one of the pastors here, I was having a conversation with somebody over social media. They messaged me this week, and they had some questions about being an affirming church, and they kept referring to me as Pastor Drake, and I said, it's okay, I promise you can call me Drake. It's totally okay, because, having been in the Baptist church for a long time, it was always Brother Ron, Brother Wilson, Brother Kevin, Brother Mike. Of course, Mike was in the Baptist church. He very well knows it's brother. And so for me, it's the same thing with pastor. So Drake is fine. Pastor Drake is okay, but it's kind of an authority title that I don't really need. But we're so glad that you decided to be with us here this Sunday morning. And again, it was one of those mornings where, probably would have felt nice to sleep in, but if you decided to be here, or if you've not decided to be here and you're watching us later this week or listening to this episode, you're binge watching our podcast or our YouTube, it is Wednesday afternoon and you're bored at work, thank you also for tuning in. We appreciate the fact that you're giving us a listen. We're in our last week of this Compassion Month, and Compassion Month is supposed to highlight and focus on the efforts that we've done or we are doing as a church, our different compassion partners. And so Kevin talked a lot about our partnership with the church in Ukraine, which is really amazing. We get to share the hope of Jesus with people whose lives have been kind of ripped apart in the last several years. Not kind of, very much have been ripped apart in the last several years. Miranda got to talk about our partnership with Week of Compassion. And that's just one of those. Week of Compassion is one of my favorites, though, because I have an affinity for working with our denomination on disaster relief all around our country. And we got to talk about how we also work with RIP medical debt and help abolish medical debt. We got to work with a lot of national and local organizations as a church, and we're so blessed to be able to do that. See, this church for a long time has been what's called a Circle of Compassion church, meaning that our money has been going to helping not just our denomination, but our country and our world for a long time. And that's something that we very much hold near and dear to our hearts, that we want to continue to be a generous church. What does it mean to be a generous church? We were at Thanksgiving together this week, and Thanksgiving together, for those of you who don't know, was something that I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, Michael Robeson, and he was a former mega church pastor, and him and I were talking about, what do we do? How do we serve our community, and how do we let people know the type of church that Meizon is? And that's kind of how the idea started to come, and he said, you're going to want to put together an event that serves your community, and I said, okay. Well, that's easy. We want to do that already. And then he said, and you want to make it kind of as big of an event as possible. Now, I want to let you guys know also that this type of event typically takes between 6 and 9 months to put together. I was talking to Heather Nations this last week, or not this last week, but a few weeks ago, and she was like, you really should have started planning this in February. And I said, I know. The Facebook event was created on October 28th. So less than a month from the date of the Facebook event being created, we had Thanksgiving together. And that's all thanks to this church and to our community. we had 72 pounds, actually it was more than that, it ended up being almost 80 pounds of meat donated by Sodexo. We had East End Eatery donate their warmer plates, 6 different like warmer buffet things, as well as stuffing and salad. We had a church family, the Robinettes, donate a salad. We had Curia donate desserts. We had Cosmic Snow Cones and Hot Diggity Dog come out and provide snow cones, and their proceeds from the Cosmic Snow Cone actually goes directly to the Pride Center, which is really awesome. We sold 115 tickets. Just in meal sponsorships alone, we raised $525. And in total, when it comes to business gifts and everything else, we get to write a check to the Pride Center for $1,000. We get to write a check to the Pride Center for $1,000. And that's pretty amazing to do in the span of a month. That's because people stepped up. People saw that the cause was worthy. So what was the cause? Was it just doing Thanksgiving together as a community? Sure, that's a great cause. But I was having a conversation with a church member after, or actually just toward the end of Thanksgiving together, who had been serving throughout the night, and there was an individual who they had a conversation with who said, you know, this holiday season, especially Thanksgiving, is really, really hard for me because my family is not accepting of who I am, is not accepting of my identity. And so normally I'm alone on Thanksgiving. Thank you for creating a space for me. Just one person. That was one person who had the guts to be able to say how they were feeling. I had a conversation with the person who was bartending for us. Yes, a church event that did have an open bar. It wasn't open, we had to pay for it, but had a bar. And the person who was bartending said, you know, I'm really thankful for Thanksgiving together because this gave me an excuse to not have to go home for Thanksgiving because I'm not very comfortable there because my mom, she tries really hard to be accepting of who I am, but my dad, it's just a whole nother story, and Thanksgiving is really hard for me, and I'm glad that I got to choose to be here and to serve the community. And by the way, both of those people are not members of our church. We saw about 150 people to 200 people, 200 people for me, 150 people for Miranda. It depends who you ask. 150 to 200 people come through and get to eat and have community and get their face painted and listen to music. We had a couple of local musicians, 3 different local musicians come out and play. If you were there toward the end of the event, you saw the Hearts, Bohemian Sunshine, play the Friends theme song, and you got to listen to everyone go during the Friends theme song. What was amazing was seeing our community come together in support of those who don't have community. That was what was amazing. And this was an event that we put together, raised $1,000 in a month. We had anonymous gifts, platinum sponsors, gold sponsors, silver sponsors from local politicians who support what we're doing at Meizon. We had a family come through toward the end, and I said, oh, would you guys like to eat? And yeah, we'd love to. And getting to have a conversation with them that they were coming back from their family Thanksgiving, and they were just trying to find a place to eat, and nothing was open in Gainesville. And then they helped tear down. It's just random people stopped, ate, and volunteered in our community who they live in Miami. But they saw worth in what we were doing. And so that kind of led me to think, well, why do we do things, one, like this? And 2, how can we continue to do things like this? Because this shouldn't just be a one-time thing, right? In fact, I kept saying over and over again that hopefully this is the first annual Thanksgiving together. We did have somebody who was there who had come by because we were in a couple of different newspapers, and we were on a couple of little different websites that said the event was happening. And they go, oh, this is really, really awesome. How long have you guys been doing this? And I said, well, about a month, right? This is brand new. How do we keep doing things like this? How do we keep serving like this as a church? And what is our motivation to do so? I was looking at the early church, and in Acts chapter 1, we have a passage where the disciples, and if you know me, you know some of these are my favorite passages, but in Acts chapter 1, we see that Jesus says, that he says, listen, he says, once I was eating with them, once he was eating with them, he commanded them, he says, do not leave Jerusalem until the Father sends you the gift that he has promised. As I told you before, John baptized with water, but I, just in a few days, in just a few days, you will be baptized with the Holy Spirit. And this is just before Jesus ascends, just before he goes up to heaven. And so he says, don't go anywhere until I've given you the Holy Spirit. And then the apostles respond. This is kind of pretty funny to me because it seems like they didn't hear him. They say, so Jesus, the time's come for you to free Israel and for you to restore our kingdom, right? The time's come for us to be put back in power. The time has come now for us to sit next to you and for us to reap the rewards and the benefits and the riches of being part of your kingdom, because they were still focused on the kingdom of God being something that was physical. And Jesus says, the Father alone has the authority to set those times and dates, and they are not for you to know. But you will receive the power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses, telling people about me everywhere, in Jerusalem, throughout Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. So he says, don't focus on what you get from this. Instead, focus on what I'm calling you to do, being my witnesses in Jerusalem, in Judea, and Samaria, to the ends of to the earth, their known world. Jesus was saying, in everything that you're going to do from here on out, it has nothing to do with what you thought you were going to get from following me. It has everything to do with loving and serving those around you and being my witnesses the way that I witness to you, by loving and serving you. And it goes on just a little bit further to say, well, remember, we started with just a few apostles here, right? We had how many? 12. We had 12 disciples, 12 apostles, 12 followers of Jesus. And just in verse 15 of Acts chapter 1, it says, during this time when about 120 believers were together in one place. 12, 120. Jesus simply mentions being his witnesses, loving people. And we go from 12 disciples to 120 together in one place. And so they decide, well, we ought to replace, because they're still focused on this power thing, we ought to replace the one of the apostles who betrayed Jesus. And so they say, well, we're gonna replace this apostle. So they nominated two men, Joseph called Barsabbas, also known as Justus, and Matthias. Then they all prayed, O Lord, you know every heart. Show us which of these men you have chosen as an apostle to replace Judas in this ministry. This is, by the way, I think a pretty funny joke on God's part. Show us which of these men you have chosen as an apostle to replace Judas. Which one of these men are you going to put in power with us? For he has deserted us and gone where he belongs. Then they cast lots. Matthias was selected to become an apostle with the other 11. And it ends there. We don't really hear much more about Matthias in that passage. What we do see is in the day of Pentecost. On the day of Pentecost, all the believers were meeting together in one place. Suddenly, there was a sound from heaven like the roaring of a mighty windstorm, and it filled the house where they were sitting. Then what looked like flames or tongues of fire appeared and settled on each of them, and everyone present was filled with the Holy Spirit and began speaking in other languages as the Holy Spirit gave them this ability. At that time, there were devout Jews from every nation living in Jerusalem. When they heard the noise, everyone came running, and they were bewildered to hear their own languages spoken by these believers. They were completely amazed. How can this be? They exclaimed. These people are from Galilee, and yet we hear them speaking in our own native languages. Here we are, Parthians, Medes, Elamites, people from Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, and the province of Asia, Phrygia, Pamphylia, Egypt, and the areas of Libya around Cyrene. Visitors from Rome, both Jews and converts to Judaism, Cretans and Arabs. We hear these people speaking in our own languages about the wonderful things that God has done. They stood up and were amazed. What can this mean? They asked each other. Why is this a joke on God's part? Because they were focused on selecting one person to bring into power, and then God says, actually, it's really not just about that one person, it's actually about everyone. I'm not just calling Matthias, but I'm calling you, and I'm not just calling you, but I'm calling everyone to follow me, to love and to serve like me. You see, you've got these guys gathered together in a room saying, which one of us is going to be in power? Which one of us is going to love and serve alongside of the other 11? How are we going to bring someone back to power to restore them? Restore our 12. And Jesus says, no. In gifting of the Holy Spirit, it's not just about one more. It's not just about you 12. It's not just about those who followed me while I was here. It's about all of those who might choose to follow me because of my Holy Spirit, because they understand the love that you have for one another and for those around you. Peter then preaches to the crowd, saying that no, they were not drunk at 9 o'clock this morning. They weren't drunk. This is not what was happening. So maybe Peter is maybe starting to understand, and then he reads this passage from the prophet Joel, which, by the way, is from 350 BCE. 350 BCE, so 400 years prior to this. In the last days, God says, I will pour out my Spirit upon all people. I will pour out my Spirit upon all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy, your young men will see visions, and your old men will dream dreams. And in those days I will pour out my Spirit even on my servants, men and women alike, and they will prophesy. And I will cause wonders in heavens above and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and clouds and smoke. The sun will become dark, and the moon will turn blood red before that great and glorious day that the Lord arrives. But everyone who calls upon the name of the Lord will be saved. I want to go back. 400 years prior to this happening, 400 years prior to this happening, which is, by the way, how many years before now? 2,400 years. The prophet Joel says, in the last days I will pour out my Spirit upon all people. Joel, even in that moment, understood that it wasn't just about him. And Peter, in seeing God pour his Spirit out on all people, says, I think I've heard of this before in the prophet Joel, and I think maybe I should preach on this because I'm starting to understand that it's not just about me. It's not just about these 12. It's not just about power. It's not just about being better than everybody else. No, it's actually about God loving and serving all people and calling all people to love and to serve each other. David says, he then preaches on David. He says, I see that the Lord is always with me. I will not be shaken, for he is right beside me. No wonder my heart is glad and my tongue shout praises. My body rests in this hope. For you will not leave my soul among the dead or allow your Holy One to rot in the grave. You have shown me the way of life, and you will fill me with the joy of your presence. Joel says, I will pour out my Spirit upon all people. And David responds by saying, this is the way of life, and you will fill me with the joy of your presence. I think maybe Peter is starting to get what Joel and David understood. And then in Acts chapter 6, we see them start to get it maybe just a little bit more. So God's message continues to spread. 7 men are chosen to serve. It says, so the 12 called a meeting of the believers. They said, we apostles should spend our time teaching the word of God, not running a food program. They still think it's a little bit power-oriented. And so brothers, select 7 men who are well-respected and are full of spirit and of wisdom, and we will give them this responsibility. Then we apostles can spend our time in prayer and teaching the word. And so they understood. It says everyone liked this idea, and they chose the following: Stephen, Philip, Prochorus, Nancor, Timon, Paramenes, and Nicholas of Antioch. Those were the 7 presented to the apostles, who prayed for them as they laid their hands on them, and so God's message continued to spread. And so they said, okay, well, God poured his message out, poured his love out on all people, calls all people to love and to serve each other. Maybe it's not just about us, and maybe it's not just us that has this responsibility, but maybe we're supposed to lay hands on and anoint and call other people into this too. Maybe if we're called to teach, that other people are called to serve food. Maybe if we're called to teach and others are called to serve food, then other people are called to build community. Then other people are called to serve in kids ministry. Then other people are called to serve communion. Then other people are called to preach, and others are called to play keys. Kevin is called to play keys and sing and play bass and everything. And so God's message continued to spread. And that's what the entire book of Acts is about, is God's message continuing to spread. what's crazy about it is if we were to take a look at the Bible, we often think of it as something that's closed and something that, well, it's kind of like ancient, outdated, and irrelevant. And sometimes if that's how you want to look at it, that's exactly what you'll see. But if you're looking for truth, that's exactly what you'll find. And when I look at the Bible and I see all of these different letters at the end that Paul and other writers are writing to different communities, I see 12 people. Then I see 120 people. Then I see God's Spirit poured out on all people. And I see all of these communities across what would have been Paul's known world that he got to start and be a part of and love on, because God doesn't just call 12 people. God doesn't just call a few people. God calls all people. This isn't about a select few. This isn't about an elect couple. This isn't about you being right at the Thanksgiving table or the Christmas table and taking a stand because you know the truth. No. This is about recognizing that God calls all people worthy of his love and worthy of our love. Why did we do Thanksgiving together? Because we understand what it looks like to take the 35 people who are in this room and say, hey, maybe it's more important than just these 35 people. Maybe the message that we're trying to share is something that goes from 35 people to 350 people to 3,500 people. Because we start to know and to understand that God loves us and God calls us to love those around us because God loves all people. We're supposed to serve them, love them, hug them, be with them, stand with those who need to be stood with, and kneel with those who need to be knelt with. I think, as 2 Timothy says, that we're supposed to focus on fanning the flame. This is why I remind you, it says, to fan the flames of the spiritual gift that God has given you. For God has given us a spirit not of fear and timidity, but of power, of love, and of self-discipline. We have a spirit of power and of love and of self-discipline. For me, Thanksgiving together is just the start of what we're going to do as a church. We go from 35 people to 350 people to 3,500 people. And even if the disciples don't get it, over and over again, they might not get it, right? They might still be focused on them, but every time they lay hands and they pray and they ask for God's blessing, and even though they might think that the blessing is power or knowing when Jesus is coming back, God is continually reminding them that the blessing has nothing to do with power, has nothing to do with understanding when Jesus is coming back, but the blessing has to do with multiplication of those who understand just how much God loves them, and the multiplication of those who are serving and growing the kingdom. What would it look like? What would it look like for us to take Thanksgiving together in this Compassion Month and all the people we serve and start rolling it into this idea that maybe it's not just about us 35 people and what we can do, but maybe it's God showing us that it's not just going to be 35, but it could actually be 350. It could actually be 3,500 of people in Gainesville who know just how much they matter to God. What if every single week we had a different story of somebody getting to tell us, thank you so much for being here, because this is a really hard day for me. This is a really hard time of the year for me. Thank you for showing me that I matter and that I'm loved, even if I don't always feel that way. It's pretty freaking cool, right? God's promises are pretty cool. We're supposed to focus on fanning the flame. I don't know exactly what that looks like. I know what we do have coming up is Serve GNV, and that's one way that we get to fan the flames of the spiritual gift that God has given us to love others and to serve our community. What does it look like for you? What does it look like to focus on fanning the flame of the spiritual gift that God has given us? What does it look like? What could it look like if our church would choose over and over again to not focus on the 35 people here, but on the 350 people, on the 3,500 people that God has shown us over and over again need to know how much he loves them, because God has poured his Spirit out on all people. What does it look like to have joy in understanding that and in feeling God's presence in that? I'm going to call the band back up. You know, I will tell you, I was thinking that we were going to have a small group this morning, And we do, this is kind of a smaller group for us on a Sunday morning, but I told Miranda, I said, if we have under 30 people, I want to do a small group and do a discussion, and we have 31 people this morning. And so I didn't get to do a small group and do a discussion. I had to preach, but I'll tell you what, I'm so excited about where we're going as a church, and I hope you are too. I'm so excited about who we get to be, living into who God has called us to be. There was a pastor in town who had a conversation with one of our pastors who said, I really love what you're doing, but do you think maybe you're 5 or 10 years too early? No. You are never too early. You're never too early in sharing the love of God with those who need to hear it most. And I am so glad that we get to do that together. Would you pray with me? God, I thank you for this morning, for this opportunity that we have to gather together. God, help us to focus on fanning the flame of love that you've given us. Help us, despite how tempting it might be, to focus on power or focus on ourselves. Help us to focus on the reality that you have poured your Spirit out on all people. God, help us in our heart of hearts and our souls to have the desire to share your love with our community. God, help us not to focus just on the 35 people who are here, but the 350, the 3,500, the 35,000 people in Gainesville that you have called us to love and to serve. Because, God, we know that you are so much more than a building. You are so much more than just this community. Help us to long as you long for a relationship with our community that multiplies your love and your impact to grow your kingdom. Help us to love and to serve Gainesville with all that we have. Help us to experience joy in that reality as King David talks about. God, we ask all of this in your holy, your heavenly, your almighty name. Amen.
Hey, before you go, just a couple things, and then we're going to let you loose. So I love that message that it's for everyone. I think that's so important. We're coming into Christmas. One of my favorite parts of the Christmas story is when the angels appear. What do they say? It says, I'm here to tell you good news of great joy for all the people. And I love that. I love that so much. And so we're getting ready to celebrate that season. Just a couple things. We're going to be decorating the church tomorrow at 1 p.m. until whenever we're done. So if you guys want to come by and help decorate the church for Christmas, tomorrow, 1 o'clock, be there, be square. The other thing is we have tons of leftover food from Thanksgiving together in our kitchen. If you want some leftovers, talk to us. We'll let you in the kitchen, and you can take as much as you want, because I think there's leftover brisket, there's leftover turkey, there's leftover mashed potatoes. They got it all out. So go grab some leftovers. We got takeout containers. It's going to be awesome, so get some food. I am so excited about this season of Advent, and so I hope you are too. We will see you here next week, same bad time, same bad channel, 10:30. We'll see you then. Thanks.